welcome to another episode of Thunderstruck, our look back at some of the greatest matches in the career of one Jushin Thunder Liger, as picked by each and every unique standalone guest. And I'm very excited about today because I'm going to be chatting for the first time with someone whose work in podcasting I deeply respect. He's a member of the Post Wrestling family. He does a podcast with my good friends Martin Bushby and Benno, the British Wrestling Experience. This is Jamie. Jamie, how are you? Jamesie, sorry. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, WH. As we were saying before we got on the line, we should probably apologise to listeners in advance. We're both quite tired for different reasons. It's very early in the morning where you are, and it's very late at night where I am. But we'll, as we said earlier, we'll channel the power of Liger to help us to power through this podcast.
Well, you have the benefit of coffee. I do not, but
Yes.
I'm excited. Yes. You are my coffee, Jamesie. Your voice.
Yes, I'll be your coffee.
The Irish lilt is just energizing me, and I get the caffeine kick. It's amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah, as I said, we have a good match to talk about. I think a match that itself will be enough to energize us.
Yeah. So before we get into the match itself, let's give a little bit of background on you as a wrestling fan. And particularly like how you got maybe interested in Japanese wrestling and in Jushin Liger.
Okay, so my childhood growing up would have been, like a lot of people in Ireland, would have been very much WWF centric. I mean, WWF, as it was at the time, WWE was the only show in town in terms of wrestling on TV. Like I'm not a young man, WH. I'm not like some of these young whippersnappers you have on this podcast. I'm a man in his late 30s. So I can go all the way back to like the first big feud that I remember people like in school talking about would have been Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. So you're going back to WrestleMania 5 in my recollection, way, way back. And it wasn't until, I suppose, I got internet access and until I actually left home and went to college at the end of the 90s into the early 2000s that my wrestling horizons were kind of expanded a little bit. Like I would have been aware of WCW, but I wouldn't have been aware of somebody like I would have known the bigger guys in WCW, like your Vader, your Sting, all those guys. But Liger and Japanese wrestling would have been completely alien to me. And it was only when I discovered the internet, I suppose, and I would have been in college and kind of reading the results of Raw from the night before and that kind of thing, and reading about the pay-per-view results. And as you do on the internet, you kind of stumble across review websites. And the guy I always credit for kind of the first person who broadened my horizons was, you probably know him, the great Aaron Furious from the UK, who's been the kind of a big name online in terms of writing reviews now for quite some time. And I found a huge archive of his reviews. And he was reviewing the likes of ECW, which I didn't know, and Ring of Honor was just starting up kind of in 2002, so he was starting to write reviews of that. And then I found, and like you would read his reviews, and like a lot of the star ratings would be maybe, they'd be maxing out at maybe 3.5 to 4 stars and that kind of thing, with the odd one maybe above 4 stars. And then I'd come to these reviews of these Japanese wrestling shows, and all of a sudden I was seeing star ratings of 4.5, 4 3/4, 5 stars. And this kind of piqued my curiosity a lot. Like, what was this amazing wrestling that was blowing this guy away? And he would also kind of, when he'd write his reviews, he would kind of give a little plug to the person he was getting his tapes, as it would have been at the time, from. And like, this is back, like a lot of our younger listeners mightn't realize that there was a time when VOD wasn't a thing, and there was a time when we kind of had to make a bit more effort to get to watch our wrestling. And you had to buy tapes basically from tape traders. And I remember my first ever purchase, it was from a guy in Scotland. And I was a poor student who had very little spare money. And I had to go to the post office to get what was called a postal order. I don't know if you guys have those.
Like a money order, right? Basically, you give the post office money and they give you basically a certified check.
Yeah, like because I was a student, I didn't have a credit card, so I couldn't use a credit card to buy these tapes online. So I had to go to the post office and give them I think I gave them maybe it was €20, and I got 4 tapes I got for €20. And my first purchase from this guy in Scotland, and I remember it vividly, I got the Best of Misawa 5-star bouts. I got two Ring of Honor shows, which we probably shouldn't be talking about. Highly illegal to be buying tapes of Ring of Honor shows that were bootlegged from the originals. And the fourth one I got was the Super J Cup from 1994, and that might be a little hint to people as to what a match we might be talking about later on. And the funny thing was, at the time I was living in Trinity College in Dublin, which is a college it's a third level college that's right in the centre of Dublin city. And I lived in the dorms of this college, basically. But to get a package in the post, you had to go over to the porter's office at the front desk. So I got a message I had ordered these tapes, and they usually took about 2 to 3 weeks to arrive. So I got a little note in under my door one day to say that there was a package waiting for me in the porter's office. So I wandered over to get this package from him anyway. And it was very obvious that there were videotapes in this package. When you looked at it, it was 4 videotapes stacked on top of one another. And the porter I had to sign for them and that kind of thing, and show him ID to prove that I was who I was and that kind of thing. And this guy is handing over these tapes to me, and he's kind of giving me a bit of a nod and a wink. And I kind of thinking, why is this guy? Why is this guy? That's a weird way to behave. And it was only later when I was telling a friend of mine, he probably thought I was importing porno tapes.
He's giving you the wink and the nudge because guess what? He's been doing the same thing, right? But for porno tapes.
That's it, yeah. And I was and it was only when I talked to a friend of mine later, I realized that's what the guy was on about. And I was I nearly felt like going back over and saying, no, you've got the wrong end of the stick. And then I realized it's probably more weird to be importing Japanese wrestling tapes than to be importing porn tapes. And it's probably better to kind of let him live in ignorance. I think that's what I was doing rather than buying these tapes of wrestling from Japan,
So don't shatter his dream. He's probably living vicariously through you.
Absolutely. I'm surprised he didn't ask me where I got them, actually.
Surprised he didn't ask you to get a copy of them.
Yeah, exactly. Can I borrow one of those tapes? He probably would have got some shock if I'd given him the tape of the J Cup. He'd be thinking, that's not what I signed up for.
You just give him the ROH one, and there you go. Special K. Oh, what's this?
Special K. There you go. Exactly.
That's amazing. My own story of I'm not gonna go deep into it, but my own story of getting into Japanese wrestling really mirrors yours, and it's based on reading about these names. Actually, my discovery of Japanese wrestlers was in an After Mag. Was inside.
Oh wow! Okay.
Because I'd follow the results, and Inside Wrestling. This is one of the After Mags. Inside Wrestling always had the champions of all the other companies, including Mexico and Japan. And I'd see all these names. Oh, the Road Warriors are the NWA International Tag Team Champions and they won it from who? The Rock and Roll Express, the Russians. Ricky Choshu and Junichiro Tenryu or something like that. They weren't ever a team, but just throwing those names out there. But I was like, who the fuck are these guys? And then I'd wait, All Japan Pro Wrestling, Pacific Wrestling Federation. What is PWF? New Japan, IWGP? What the hell is this stuff? And then I just dove in. I was like, there's wrestling in Japan? There's wrestling outside of North America? I didn't know that. Yeah. And then I got this book I think it's called Wrestling Almanac, and it was 1990. I'm going to say it's 1996 or something, because they're waxing poetically about Misawa and Taue and Kawada, and I'm reading these names for the first time in my life, and something published by, the Stanley Weston Publishing Company, and I'm just freaking out. And then I get into tape trading. I get my first tape, not from some guy in Scotland, but from some guy in Toronto, Dan the Mouth Lavransky, who did the Live Wrestling podcast radio show with Jeff Merrick, and I met those guys, and that's how I got involved with post wrestling to this day, and blah blah blah. I met John Polk when he was 16, blah 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 blah. Anyways, I don't want to go on about that, but yeah, it's very similar to you, Jamesie, and this is one of those shows also that I got into, the Super J Cup 94. So with that being said, what match are we going to review today?
So we're reviewing one of the semi-final matches of that tournament between Jushin Thunder Liger and the Great Sasuke.
Yes, and this is on April 16th, 1994, the Super J Cup 1994. And as you said, it's one of the semifinals, and it's emanating from Ryogoku Kokugikan, a.k.a. Sumo Hall. And James, give us a bit of background on the tournament and on this and the Great Sasuke, if you could.
Okay, so if we're talking about Liger, and this whole podcast series, I suppose, is aimed at talking about the greatness of Liger and celebrating his career and that kind of thing. And like one of the great things about Liger was his influence, and the idea of the J Cup was Liger's brainchild. You know, it was something that he always wanted to do, where he wanted to kind of highlight the junior heavyweight division in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and there had never been a show put on by New Japan that was solely kind of containing junior heavyweight wrestlers. So he had the idea of a one-night tournament, and he tried to assemble a kind of a cast of the best junior heavyweights he could in Japan, with a particular eye on maybe highlighting guys who wouldn't be known by the wider public, you know. So he ended up putting together a one-night tournament with 14 wrestlers, and reading it now, like it's a who's who of kind of wrestlers of the time, you know. So you had Black Tiger, who was Eddie Guerrero. You had Wild Pegasus, who was Chris Benoit. You had Dean Malenko. You had Gedo. You had Hayabusa. You had Great Sasuke. You had Negro Casas from Mexico, Taka Michinoku, Super Delphin. You know, the list goes on, you know, and if you look at that lineup and look at what those guys went on to do in their careers, you know, but a lot of the guys in the tournament maybe wouldn't have been like the likes of Hayabusa and the likes of Sasuke wouldn't have been as well known maybe in 1994. And this was Liger's way of kind of showing off these guys and their talents. So it was run in conjunction. It was mainly new, like the most well-represented company were New Japan, and they were the host promotion. But you also had Michinoku Pro, you had Wrestling Association R, which is the former Wrestling and Romance promotion run by Tenryu, FMW, CMLL. So a lot of smaller kind of promotions, again, that maybe wouldn't have been as well known, were kind of promoted here as well. And Sasuke himself, Sasuke is... It's hard to... I was trying to have a think about Sasuke earlier. Like, you know, like obviously when we talk about Liger, we talk about one of the greatest of all time, you know, a legend of wrestling. I don't know, would you call Sasuke one of the greats of all time? But I suppose, would you describe him maybe as more of a cult hero kind of WH? Like, he's very much a kind of a Sabu type figure, where he's... You know, he may not be the greatest wrestler of all time, but he does things that really stand out to people, you know. So to my mind, Sasuke would be one of the craziest bumpers of all time, one of the great sellers of all time, an amazing one of those fearless high flyers, a bit like Sabu, like, who just seemed to have no regard for his own personal health or safety when he was, you know, when Sasuke went for it, Sasuke went for his big time, you know, to the point where he suffered some terrible injuries in the ring. Like, I believe he fractured his skull on 2 separate occasions while wrestling. He is one of the founders of Michinoku Pro. Later in his life, he went on to be a member of the Japanese government, I believe. So a guy with a very interesting life and a very kind of a very eclectic career, you know, and to the point that he was even on Joey Janela's spring break there on WrestleMania weekend, only kind of, it was the year before last, you know. So a guy who's a big name in wrestling, as I said, maybe not on the same legendary status as Liger, but nonetheless, I would say, a kind of a cult hero. Would you kind of agree with that assessment of him?
I think it's a fair assessment of him. He's definitely not someone I would put in like my list of the greatest of all time, because I think there was like a window of his career where like he was an amazing wrestler. He's one of the best high flyers, as you're saying, and he's actually a really good technical wrestler as well. Like, I think it's a really underrated part of his repertoire is like how good of a like submission wrestler he can be, and he did some amazing looking like, you know, joint locks and submission moves. But I mean, that window closed very quickly, like, for him, because of various reasons. Like, part of it is like racking up injuries, part of it is like his own sabotage of his own legacy by doing like, you know, things that people weren't necessarily expecting. Like, you know, I think there's like some stuff he did with like FMW before it closed. You know, he got arrested for different things, and he went into the Japanese the diet and all this stuff. And then and now he's just kind of like this comedy wrestler. Like, people will, you know, like in 2019, you know, he's kind of a meme wrestler in some respects. Like, there's some stuff that goes out on the internet, on Twitter, where like it's just gifs of him doing stupid shit, and it's like, oh, he's the greatest still. And it's like, yeah, okay. I mean, that's your type of wrestling. It's fine. People can like what they want. It's not for me. I mean, I just think to myself, I just shake my head. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm gonna go back to watching, you know, Michinoku Pro from 1993 to 95, and and I'll watch like this tournament. One thing I want to make a note about in the Super J Cup '94 is like Liger himself just went out there, and because he booked this show, he decided who went over who, and like in his own performances, I really thought it's so evident. Like this is such a perfect case of like the generosity of Jushin Thunder Liger, like how unselfish he is. Like the match with Hayabusa, he goes through the match with Hayabusa in the first round, but he gives Hayabusa so much in that match that I was so surprised. Like, because Hayabusa comes from a deathmatch company, which New Japan is not a fan of, and this is FMW, of course. But like Liger saw something in Hayabusa, and I believe they were friends at around that time. But like the amount of selling he does for Hayabusa is just unbelievable before he eventually goes through that match. But so we talk about the other semifinal match is Chris Benoit. Wild Peg is a New Japan junior heavyweight, one of the top guys in that company, in that division, and he goes into the semifinals with Geto. And Geto is a great worker back in '94, but if you ever saw Geto, you'd be like, whoa, this guy's in the semifinal because he looks like shit. Okay, he's wearing pajamas. He's got this god awful like Shaolin style fucking ponytail, looks complete like fucking trash. Like he looks like, you know. And I'm using this as a quote, like indie trash. That's what he looks like, okay? If whatever connotations that brings up in your mind, that's what he looks like. But he's a great worker. And Jushin Liger realizes this, and he's like, okay, I'm going to get this guy into the semifinals. And he would push him even further in the 95 one. But I think someone else booked that one. I think Dragon booked the 95 one. So, but this one, he went to the semifinals with like, you know, Wild Pegasus, like their top Gaijin. It'd be like if... What would be the best thing? I'm trying to think. Some indie guy going to the semifinals against Will Ospreay in Sumo Hall.
Doki.
It's fucking great, yeah. Doki going to the semifinals against Will Ospreay of this tournament, and on the other side is like, I don't know, Shigo Takagi is a junior against I'm trying to think who else is good. Like Taiji Ishimori. Okay, so that's one bracket. Takagi and Ishimori over here, and then Will Ospreay versus fucking Doki. Oh, okay, but they'd be giving. You could tell, like, okay, the company's behind him, so Liger is behind him. And then here's the thing, like, he put over Sasuke, like, in the whole tournament is just based around Great Sasuke. Get this guy over, and I think to some degree, by extension, get his company Michinoku Pro over, because it's a very regional. Yeah. Very regional promotion, but you see Taka's in Sasuke's corner in this match, and it's just like Super J Cup '94 is just like one of those things where like people don't realize how great of a booker Jushin Liger is. Like I always amazed that he never became like the full head on booker or just stayed the booker of the junior division. But I've been told like it's not something he wants to do because he doesn't want to deal with the politics, and I can't blame him for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was watching and I had a little look at some of the other matches in the show in the last few days leading up to the podcast, and like you're looking at it and you're thinking, God, what a different era of wrestling like it is, you know, like if New Japan, like look at the last time New Japan did the J Cup in Japan. That one they did maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and basically it ended up just being all the New Japan guys in the semi-finals, and all the guys they brought in from the smaller promotions got jobbed out basically, and they were there to put the New Japan guys over. And here, like even the matches Liger puts himself in, like he wrestles the 2 FMW guys and the guy from Michinoku Pro. So he wrestles Hayabusa and makes Hayabusa, like to my mind, that's the first high-profile match of Hayabusa's career. You know, like he really, really makes that guy. Then Ricky Fuji in the next round kind of gives him a little bit of a bump just by being in the ring with him. And then Sasuke in the semi-final, you know, and like it just wouldn't happen now that New Japan would be so generous to these smaller companies now. Like, you know, it really felt like Liger was acting in the best interest of wrestling overall by booking this tournament and wanting to bring he was kind of looking at it from the point of view of, we're going to bring everyone up with us, because if we all come up together, then, you know, it's going to help us all out. Whereas nowadays you feel like New Japan would just kind of work in New Japan's own interest.
And I think it goes to a point you made earlier. Like he really cares about the junior heavyweight division or the junior heavyweight scene in Japan. Like he cares about like, because his own life story of like getting into wrestling is like he was, you know, they said, you're too small, we can't use you. And then, okay,
that's right.
You're not going to take me to the New Japan dojo. He went to Mexico to train. And the story goes like, New Japan officials went to the CMLL dojo. That's where he was training, and they took pity on him because he was starving because he had no money.
Starving, yeah.
And they said, okay, you can come back with us to Japan. We'll accept you into the dojo, and the rest is history, right? So I think for him, this idea, like, I'm too small to be like into your dojo because you don't respect people of my size. Like, he's not that small either. Like, but for that time, the 80s, he was, right? So I think for him, it's like, this is like, I'm going to show people of my weight class, of my style of wrestling, can be box office draws, and I'm going to prove that. And he did with this show. He proved exactly, because it was running head to head against, I think, a Budokan show held by All Japan at the same day. So
that's right. Yeah. And like, they drew 11,500 to this show. Like, it did great business, And just to go back to what you were saying, WH, about Liger being rejected, first of all, I was just doing a bit of reading about Sasuke earlier, and I never realized that he had actually applied to get into the New Japan dojo and was turned down by them. And he had to go elsewhere to kind of train as a wrestler and that kind of thing. And you kind of wonder, did Liger look at him and kind of see a kindred spirit? A small guy who kind of was told he would never make it, and kind of saw a bit of himself in Sasuke almost, and kind of maybe that kind of plays into why he kind of decided to help him out and kind of give, elevate him and give him this big push in the tournament.
I think there's definitely something to that. It's just something that Jushin Liger has done throughout his career, because like in previous episodes I've reviewed, like, the tag match he has with Takahiro Murahama from Osaka Pro Wrestling in the early 2000s, and they have this amazing tag match, and we're in on a big Osaka Pro Wrestling like show in Eddie Honor in Osaka Joe Hall. And this is, Osaka Pro is like this really small indie, but he would go to these shows to help these guys out because like he believed in them. And this is funny enough that Osaka Pro Wrestling is an offshoot company of Michinoku Pro. It's a company started by Super Delphin, who was a Michinoku Pro guy, but after a falling out with Sasuke, which is very, very common story, by the way, in wrestling, is, these guys had a falling out with Great Sasuke, who is the owner and booker of Michinoku Pro. Yeah. Why is that? Oh, well, Sasuke wouldn't put anyone else over. He just keeps himself on top. Oh, okay. So he's like every other wrestler promoter in the history of wrestling. I see. Okay. But this is like the history of Jushin Liger. Like, I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to get these other people in other promotions. When he was the Open the Dream Gate champion for Dragon Gate, he did his best to, like, when he was doing title offenses, and when he, I think, trying to remember who he eventually put over. I think it was Shima. Don't yell at me if that's wrong, but whoever he put over, he put that person over strong. He made that belt stronger. So like he does not look at it as like, I'm doing you guys a favor. He's like, how can I help you? That's his mentality.
And the funny thing is, it doesn't tarnish his legacy one bit. Like, and nobody looks at Jushin Liger and kind of, the way these wrestlers, some wrestlers are so protective of their reputation and so protective of themselves that they won't take pinfalls, and they think it will tarnish their aura or something like that. Like, nobody, Liger's greatness isn't diminished in anyone's eyes because he put people over. You know what I mean? Like, I had the great honour and privilege of actually getting to see Liger wrestle in person here in Dublin in Ireland earlier this year in OTT. And he came over and he put over Scotty Davis. Scotty Davis is an up and coming wrestler in Ireland. We're all very high on him here in Ireland, but he's a relative nobody in terms of the worldwide scene. Liger comes over to Dublin and we were all in shock when he put him over. We just assumed, we're so used to New Japan wrestlers coming in and just pinning our own talents. It's what happens when they come to the UK for the most part. It's what happens when they come to Europe. They don't tend to take pinfalls. And here's Liger, comes to the country for the first time and puts over an 18-year-old kid, and that's the mark and the measure of the man. And like, to me, that enhances his greatness rather than diminishes from it.
Oh, definitely. That's what I was going to say. Is like, if anything, his like generosity, like, is something that enhances his reputation and makes him more of a legend than like a lot of other people
100%,
of his generation, like, who wouldn't do business with people, whether they're from Japan or from the United States or Canada or the UK or from Mexico. Like, there's a lot of selfish wrestlers out there. Like, there's like many Mil Mascareses out there. There's very few Jushin Thunder Ligers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's all I'm going to say about that. So let's get into the match, Jamesie. So we start the video on New Japan World. At least I did. I don't know. Maybe you dug out your old tape. I do not have access to my DVD of this show. It's back home in Toronto. But Liger's out first, and Sasuke is introduced first. They're all in the ring right now, and he's seconded by Taka Michinoku, a very young-looking Taka Michinoku, who knew what kind of a ne'er-do-well he would become later in life. And there's a big cheer for Sasuke's name announcement. Liger's name announcement is next, and he gets, I would say, a little bit of a bigger response. And it's interesting to note that, because throughout, as you'll hear throughout the review of this match, like there's things that Liger does to make this crowd turn against him, and it's a beautiful thing to see. So early sequence sees both guys going for like positions from behind, then switching to leg locks, to headlocks, to head scissors, and no one is able to get an advantage over one another, and they end that whole sequence at a standoff, and just typical like Japanese opening sequence to to a high profile match, Jamesie.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I would say a cautious start. There's nobody kind of tearing into each other. I suppose there's no established hatred between these guys, like, really. It's a tournament match, and you have a kind of, Liger is the established guy in the company coming up against this younger guy who, would I be right in saying, WH, this is the first time that Sasuke ever wrestled in New Japan? He hadn't wrestled for them.
He might have done house shows. He might have done multi-man house show matches for them. I can't recall the timeline of when the Michinoku Pro guys. This includes Sasuke, Delphin, Grand Naniwa, and of course the guys from the Kaintai Deluxe, like Dick Togo, Taka, and all those guys coming in to do working. On one side would be Liger and his crew, like El Samurai and those guys, and teaming with Naniwa and Delphin and Sasuke. On the other side would be Otani, Takaiwa, Kanemoto, the eternal rivals of the masked dudes, and then on their side would be the Kaintai DX. So those things, those matches, those 10-mans, 12-mans are just amazing to watch. If you can get a tape and you see that listed there, you're probably in for at least a 3 3/4 match for a multi-man on a New Japan show in the 90s. Think about that. I'm definitely not shelling out money for something similar on 2019 New Japan show. Let me tell you that.
Absolutely not. Yeah. But as you said, so the reception Sasuke gets, considering he's a new face to the crowd, is fairly amazing. You know what I mean? And as we will get into pretty soon, by the end of the match, he's a bigger deal to them, So I'll let you keep going with your play-by-play anyway. So
from here, Liger gets Sasuke into kind of a modified surfboard while he's on the bottom. But Sasuke turns that into a kind of, I don't know what kind of move this is, like a thigh brace. He's basically in Liger's guard, if you're an MMA fan, and he's just pushing down on his thighs. So he's able to, get the advantage over Liger here. Then, let's see, where am I? So some more jockeying for an advantage between the two. It leads to a seated pendulum stretch from Liger on Sasuke that he then transitions into his Romero special. And then, Liger hits this beautiful tilt-a-whirl backbreaker into a camel clutch. So basically, Liger, early in the match, is just running through his, a lot of his signature moves that he would maybe normally say for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, later from the normal point of where he does it in this match.
Yeah, I suppose we're kind of getting down to business straight away, and I suppose it's understandable from these guys' point of view, you know what I mean? That this is a 14-man tournament all taking place in one night. You're going to be having a lot of matches, that there isn't time for kind of unnecessary stuff in these matches. You kind of have to get to the meat of the match pretty quickly, and to go back to that surfboard straight away that Liger does, where he does the one where he does the traditional surfboard, but then he drops the hands down and cranks kind of into a kind of a face lock or a chin lock, and he's bending Sasuke back so much, the poor guy is nearly bent in half, you know what I mean? So immediately you kind of have Liger establishing his dominance and his I suppose his size dominance over Sasuke. And immediately, I think a great thing about this match is I feel almost straight away from this point, the roles are defined. You have Liger being the bigger guy, the bully. He's acting like he's arrogant. He's this is his home turf. He's the kind of the junior ace of the home promotion. And he's kind of bullying this little indie guy who's had the temerity to come onto his home turf and try and challenge him, and he's being a dick basically almost from the outset.
And it kind of makes sense from a from a psychological point of view of the match itself. He would, of course, he wants to go into the finals. He's wrestled 2 matches already. This is his 3rd match. He wants to go to the final, so he's thinking, I got to put this guy away quickly, right? So like I'm gonna use all my signature moves, the Romero special, the Tilt the World backbreaker, early on to wear him out so I can put him away quickly. I don't want to wrestle like a 20-minute match because I'm gonna have to face. I think I'm trying to remember if this was the second semifinal match of the night or the first one, because then he has to go face, while Pegasus, Chris Benoit, in the final. So that anyone who's in this match has got to think, oh my God, I'm not in for a good time, because I say what you will about Benoit, we're not going to get into that, but like that guy was a machine in the ring. So it's like, from a storytelling point of view, it's like, yes, it makes complete sense that he's going to hit all his big moves here. And you're right, this whole idea that he's the bully, like, you're on my home turf, you punk. But that's the brilliance of his storytelling, is because like he wants people on his own home turf. Sumo Hall is his home, right? It's New Japan's turf. Yeah. But he wants these fans to cheer for Sasuke. And guess what? I'm gonna spoil it a little. He succeeds. They turn on him, and it's because of Jushin Liger. It's not. It's because Sasuke is a great babyface in his world, but more importantly, it's because Jushin Liger is a master professional wrestler.
Absolutely. He has that ability that Tanahashi has, where yes, he's predominantly a babyface, but like just like when Tanahashi wants to be an asshole in a match, when he does, it's amazing. Like, and it's really, really good to watch.
Yes, Liger has. I think probably he learned it from Liger. That's my
exactly. Yeah.
From here, Liger has the early advantage and maintains it with a capo kick that knocks Sasuke out for a couple of seconds. Like, there's this point where he just hits his capo kick, and you think, okay, he should be getting up, but Sasuke's just lying there, selling the hell out of this thing. The result is that you hear.
Do you think he was legitimately knocked out? Because he's either a great seller, or he actually was a little bit knocked silly for a while, because like the match came to a standstill for a good 30 seconds, and like the ref goes to check him, and he's kind of lifting his head up, and his head is just flopping back down onto the canvas. And if it was Sasuke selling, like, that's some amazing selling.
Well, what the result of that is, of like him just lying there from this capo kick, is that this is where you start hearing the smattering of the fans getting behind Sasuke. Sasuke! Sasuke! You don't hear it before this point in the match. This is when you start hearing it. It's like, I don't think it is, because like I think if he was legit knocked out, he wouldn't have been able to do like a lot of the moves that he did later. Like,
true. Yeah.
For me, like, I mean, there is a part in the match where like, well, maybe he was knocked out. We'll get to that near the end of this review. But no, I'm thinking it was deliberate, and I'm thinking that's something that maybe him and Liger came up with. It's like, okay, we got to turn these fans against me. I'm going to just beat the shit out of you for like 5 minutes, and I'm going to pretend to knock you out. So like, because people don't want to see like a match end that way, right? This is a big tournament.
Oh yeah.
All these people are. This is a highly anticipated match because of the performance Sasuke did earlier in their tournament, and maybe things that people have seen his work outside of New Japan and are excited about it. So if you have this sequence where he's just lying there and like there's a fear that the match is going to end, so maybe they're cheering for him more like get up, continue fighting. We don't want this match to end. Like
but
that turns into like a support for Sasuke himself, doesn't it? So I'm just like, I think that I'm going to go with that, because that sounds like just absolute brilliance for me.
Yeah, that's the kind of amazing psychology that makes Liger the great wrestler he is, isn't it? And like all of the things that happen in this match, and we'll talk about other things later, these have Liger's fingerprints all over them. He's a wrestler that thinks about what he's doing and gives deep thought to how he can get a crowd to react the way he wants to.
Yeah, so Sasuke does indeed recover. Don't worry, everyone. The match doesn't end here.
That's not it.
Liger hits him with a tombstone pile driver, and then transitions into this brutal looking. I gotta imagine you love this part, Jamesie, the crossface chicken wing by Liger, and then and this is where the Sasuke calls get louder and more sustained. So at this point, like, Liger's really focusing on the left arm of the Great Sasuke.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I will. One of the things that always comes to mind for me about Liger is when he locks on a submission. He locks on a submission in a way that very few wrestlers do. Like everybody uses submissions in wrestling, but when Liger puts on a submission, like he cranks that thing on big time, you know. And as you said, the chicken wing, like when he's got the chicken wing on, he's so demonstrative in his own movements, like he's moving his own head, like that long hair is flying all over the place. When he puts on, he kind of transitions from that into I'm very bad at naming some of these submissions. It looks like a kind of a Kimura or a double wrist lock, kind of the arms behind the back. But again, like it's a bit like when Kawada puts on the stretch plum, like he's absolutely shaking his whole body, like putting every ounce of his effort into trying to hurt his opponent as much as he can, and then transitions from that into the cross arm breaker. And again, you feel like he's going to pull Sasuke's arm out of its socket, almost like the way he's cranking these submissions in, you know. And all the time the crowd sympathy is building and building for Sasuke, you know. And at this point it's very clear who's the dickhead in the match and who's the kind of the underdog hero, you know what I mean? And yeah, like that's, you know, I think there's this misconception out there maybe from people who mightn't have seen a lot of Liger that he's a great high flyer, and Liger was a great high flyer at points in his career, maybe before the brain tumor and that kind of thing. But Liger putting on submissions is one of the most amazing things to me in wrestling, like just cranking on these submissions. And yeah, like I'd always like to see a little bit of limb work in a match, you know, so this work on the arm I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, definitely that Kimura. It's definitely the Kimura lock where he just like gets in front of Sasuke, he gets his arm like in a wrist lock and just torques on it, like constantly torquing on it. And you can tell the crowd is like, oh my god, you're gonna break his arm, stop doing that. So like the heat for Sasuke is building. And to his credit, like we got to give Sasuke a lot of credit here. His selling, like his body language, because he's wearing a bodysuit too. He's wearing a mask as well. Like you can only see his jaw, but his selling, like the way he uses his jaw, the lower half of his mouth is amazing. Yes. It's so amazing. Like you can tell, like this guy is in pain. He's like, he doesn't know if he can continue. Like you can tell, like I should just give up here. But he doesn't. And like you get behind that. It's so brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And even his eyes behind that little mask, like you can tell so much from his eyes, you know. Like I always talk about El Generico as being one of the greatest baby faces of all time, a guy who worked behind a mask and yet was so expressive in his body movements, and you know, the little bit of his face, you could see how much he could express from it, you know. And Sasuke is exactly the same here. Like, yeah, like you really get the impression this guy is in complete agony. Like he's, you know, when he's in those submissions, he's flailing his other arm, he's flailing his legs, and yet because he's so small and because there's such a size difference, there's actually very little he can do to get out of the submissions, you know. So you just feel like this guy is in a serious predicament here, and it's almost. It's completely one-sided at this stage. You know, it's becoming kind of a match where you think, God, is Sasuke just going to get completely squashed here because he's not getting anything at all from Liger. Liger's just swarming all over him. And as we said already, our sympathy for Sasuke is just building and building all the time.
Yeah, and like to that point, Sasuke is finally able to turn the tide of the match in his favor by catching Liger in midair with a drop kick that sends Liger to the outside. And Sasuke follows up by going to the apron and hits a beautiful Asai moonsault from the apron, from the second rope onto Liger, who's on the floor. This is just absolutely gorgeous. But I think he does more damage to himself because he's the one who ends up crashing into the announce table.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about Sasuke's high flying is the wildness of it. You know, as you said, like it is a technically beautiful Asai moonsault, but there's also that little bit of is he quite in control of what he's doing, you know? And like, as you said, he lands hard here, and he actually, it kind of works in well with the arm work because he comes up from the table as if he's hurt his elbow kind of on the table. So that just kind of adds to the injury that he's already had.
Yeah, and speaking to his wildness, Sasuke gets back in the ring first, and as Liger gets on the apron, he attempts to suplex Liger back into the ring, but instead runs him into the post. And then from there, Sasuke goes to the other corner, and then from there he gets a running start, hits a running step-up plancha dive from the top turnbuckle onto Liger, who's on the floor. And this is a point where, like, there's so many things that could have gone wrong here. Like, Liger's just a centimeter out of position. This would not have been good for Sasuke, or Sasuke could have slipped or whatever. But this sequence, again, it's like wild, but it's so... It just goes to like Sasuke's amazing coordination and like the gracefulness of his like high flying, like these senton dives and like planchas and everything else he does. Unfortunately, we did not see the space flying tiger drop in this match, but like it's just for me, it just reminded me like how much I loved like early 90s Great Sasuke for his high flying and everything else about him.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, and sometimes you see high flyers, and they're so controlled and so technically good and so graceful that the moves almost lose their impact. They're so in control of their bodies that when they actually hit the move, at the moment when their body hits the other guy's body, it's like, is that really hurting? Am I supposed to think that's hurting the other guy? Whereas when Sasuke hits these dives, like the impact he has with Liger, like when he goes over that ring post and hits him, like there's a really big impact. You know, you feel like he's doing damage to Liger, you know. And, you know, in terms of the story of the match, it feels like Sasuke has been, you know, he's been so beaten down and he's working so much from underneath that he's having to just throw everything he can at Liger now. Like, so he, you know, he's done that big wild Asai moonsault. He's done this dive over the post. He's just reverting to the big moves almost straight away, because it's almost anything he can do to kind of get even with them, you know.
Oh yeah, this is like, now we're hitting like the kind of the beginning of the crescendo of this match. From here, Sasuke gets back into the ring first, and he's able to catch Liger as he's getting back into the ring with a series of knee drops, vicious looking knee drops to Liger's midsection. Sasuke hits a big spinning wheel kick for only a 2 count. He hits a power driver. Only 2 count. And Jamesie, this is like one of my favorite moves. Sasuke hits the motherfucking Thunderfire powerbomb for a 1, a 2. Big kick out, and this crowd is going fucking nuts now, because like Liger just kicked out of, like, after a series of all these big high impact moves, he kicked out of one of like Sasuke's signature finishers.
Yeah, like, and that's the first proper near fall of the match, I think, isn't it? Like, it's one of those ones where if it had been the finish, you would find it reasonably believable that the match could have finished at that point. As you said, the crowd completely buys it. You know, like, there's all those big oohs and ahs when Liger kicks out of it, and the way Liger takes that move as well, like, you know, he's taking that bump on his neck and he sells it so well afterwards, you know. So yeah, great moment in the match for such a little guy to be hitting this like a big razor's edge type power bomb and flinging him across the ring, almost like an amazing visual.
It's fantastic. From here, Sasuke goes to the top rope for a senton atomiko, basically the swanton bomb. But Liger moves. Sasuke hits the ropes. Liger ducks his lariat and connects with a shote. He goes for the cover. A 1, a 2. Sasuke kicks out. So like you're saying, we're now hearing like hitting the point where like they're just trying to end the match and they're kicking out. They're not giving up. Neither of these guys is giving up. They're just going to continue this match. Liger hits the sit out Liger bomb for only a 2 again. So like he kicks out the Thunder Fire power bomb, and Great Sasuke is able to kick out of the sit out Liger bomb here.
Oh, and that Liger bomb, WH, Jesus Christ, that's one of the best Liger bombs I've ever seen. Like, because Sasuke is so small, like Liger's really able to get him up, like, and he just flings him down, like just completely releases it as he's dropping down, and like it just looked incredible, you know what I mean? And like the volume has completely been turned up in the crowd now, you know what I mean? Like, they're so into this match at this point, you know, they're reacting to everything. They're, you know, they're expecting that at any point any of these big moves could be the end of the match.
Well, this is, I think, when the point where they start doing the Sasuke.
Yes,
and they're oh my
totally
god, like
behind him at this point.
I hear nothing for Liger, really. It's all for Sasuke, and they created their own chat for him where they're doing the claps. Sasuke. I was like, oh my god, this is such a brilliant match to this point, just for like the sheer storytelling, like not just the moves, but like the way they're working the moves, and like just how Liger has turned this New Japan crowd against him. It's so beautiful. From here, Liger hits the top rope Frankensteiner and sits on Sasuke for the pin, but Sasuke catches him in a sunset cradle for a 1 and a 2. Liger kicks out, and the crowd is electric. Liger, check this. I love this part, Jamesy. Like, Liger goes to the ref. Was that 2? Was that 3? Did I kick out? And he's like, and I think it's Tiger Hattori. He's like, no, it's a 2. And he's like, so relieved. And if you notice on the outside, one of the seconds for Liger is a young Shinjiro Otani. And this is something that's a signature Shinjiro Otani thing, where did I get the win? Or if he kicks out, was it a 2 or a 3? And then the look on his face of relief, where it's a 2. It's a 2. Okay, I kicked out. This is something that Liger did a lot, where he's like, if he's pinning someone, that's a 3. And he's like, yeah, I got 3. And then, the frustration, that's something you can tell that, like, Otani got from Liger, as far as I'm concerned, at least.
Yeah, like, and we talked about Sasuke being able to convey emotion from under a mask. Like, here you have Liger, who's his whole body is covered, his face is covered by this mask. You shouldn't be able to tell how he's feeling, but like his relief when he realizes, like I don't think I've ever seen a wrestler kick out of a move and check with it's usually the guy doing the pinning, like you said, that asks the ref, was it not 3? But I don't think I've ever seen the guy who kicked out of the move actually go to the ref and check because he's not sure himself. Like, that's amazing psychology. Like, that's immediately kind of, convincing you that Sasuke can beat this guy because the guy himself isn't even sure what happened. Like, that's incredible psychology. And like, he punches the air with relief. You can see him visibly breathe a sigh of relief. And like, that ability to convey emotion and to be so expressive from behind that suit and mask is another thing like that just marks Liger aside from nearly every wrestler in history.
I think he's probably, like, you got to think, he's wearing that bodysuit. You think that's a hindrance to, like, selling, but it's not. Like, he's such a master of body psychology, like conveying emotion through his body. Not even like, because he's got a full face mask. You can't see anything. You can't see his eyes. You can't see his mouth. Yeah. It's amazing. This guy is so good. This is why I wanted to do this series, Jamesie, to wax poetic about the greatness of Jushin Thunder Liger. From here, Liger hits a release German for only a 2. He hits the Fisherman Buster, only a 2. So the fans are firmly behind Sasuke at this point. And like, Liger's just throwing everything at him. Like, these are normally moves that would pin like other, like maybe lesser people on the card in New Japan. That, like, he would beat probably Honaga with this match, with this kind of a move, or he'd beat like maybe a younger, like Otani at his point in his career with this kind of a move, like the Fisherman Buster, definitely. Liger from the apron suplexes Sasuke to the floor, and I like the part that this is not like some struggle. He just grabs him and he suplexes him out. Like, I like that more than like the 2-minute struggle. Like, oh, I'm going to suplex you back in. I'm going to suplex you outside. Liger, this is something Liger is really good at. He just grabs the dude. He gets on the apron and he throws him outside with a suplex. It's beautiful stuff, Jamesy.
Absolutely, yeah. And just to go back a slight step, that German that he throws, Jesus, like, I'm trying not to swear too much on this podcast. I don't want John Away to ban us from the podcast for swearing too much. But geez, that German suplex, a released German suplex, and he literally throws him halfway across the ring, like one of the best German suplexes I've ever seen. Just ragdolls the guy around. And from that Fisherman's Buster as well, like, that's the biggest, that's the loudest the crowd. Every time there's a kick out now, the volume's going up and up and up. And like, that Fisherman's Buster is definitely the loudest crowd reaction so far.
Yeah, and from here, like, Liger so he suplexes Sasuke to the floor. Liger then climbs to the top turnbuckle and hits this amazing cross body block dive onto Sasuke, who's on the floor. The height he gets on this is like similar to what we would see later on from like Tanahashi with his high fly flows from the top turnbuckle to the outside. This is, you can tell, Jushin Thunder Liger is one of like Hiroshi Tanahashi's like favorite wrestlers. He's got to be an inspiration for this man.
Yeah, and even in the course of our conversation, we're picking out little things that you can see Tanahashi doing, like, so like we've seen the full range of Liger in this match. Like, we saw the mat work at the start, we saw the amazingly kind of vicious submission holds and that kind of thing. We've seen his personality, we've seen his expressiveness, and that crossbody, like, just a little reminder that yes, like, as well as everything else, he still is an incredible high flyer.
Okay, and so we get back into the ring, and Jamesy, why don't you finish out the rest of the review, because we're kind of pretty much at the finish now.
Okay, so he's where did we get to? He had done the crossbody.
Yeah, and so they're back in the ring, and Liger hits this capo kick that onto Sasuke again.
And Sasuke's on the apron at this stage, and Liger's in the ring, and Sasuke's on the apron, and Liger hits the capo kick, and kind of at this point, like, his arrogance, he's been really arrogant, and his cockiness is back. Like, he kind of lost the cockiness at that point that we talked about, where he thought he'd lost the match, and the cockiness went for a while, but now he feels like he's back in control, and the cockiness has come back, and he makes the fatal error of turning his back on Sasuke, and Sasuke's on the outside. So Sasuke tries to do some kind of a springboard move into the ring to hit on Liger when Liger turns around. I think he was probably going for the Mysterio Rana. I don't know if you have any theories on that, or maybe just a springboard drop kick. I'm not sure. But whatever he was going for, it doesn't work out. And he kind of slips on the ropes and lands face first in the ring. And in an instant, the minute it happens, Liger laughs. Now, again, he's a guy who's behind a mask, so how can you tell he's laughing? But like, you can see him, he nearly holds his belly and rocks his head back and laughs. He sarcastically applauds Sasuke. The crowd almost kind of has a murmur of kind of a bit of concern and also kind of laughing as well almost. And in that moment, Liger drops his guard for a second. And Sasuke jumps up, gets the Rana into a pinhold, and gets the 3 count, and the crowd erupts.
Yeah, and like you'll see this camera pan of like the kind of like upper section of the floor section of Sumo Hall, and there's some fans who are like, "Oh, Liger lost," and they're not happy about it. But the majority of the fans are like cheering wildly for this win,
jumping around.
And to go back, I'm thinking like I think it might have been like the the Dragon Rana or the Mysterio Rana that you're talking about. But one of his signature moves, like Sasuke's signature moves, was this like drop kick to the back, like springboard drop kick to the back of his opponent's like shoulder or neck. So I'm thinking he was going to go for that and then for the Rana. But I just think, like, in that moment, like, let's be honest, in 2019, there's a lot of wrestlers at any stage, like whether it's the independents or whether it's at like an MLW level or whether it's like an Impact level or as high up as like the WWE, right? Like the quote unquote big leagues, where there are wrestlers who wouldn't know what the fuck to do in that situation. They'd be like, Liger, okay, in a split second, I'm gonna do what's natural. I'm gonna make fun of this guy. And then that's his downfall. And it's brilliant. Because, like, I'd almost think that this was planned, that the slip was planned. You know, the way it's brilliantly safe.
That's the debate I've heard before. Yeah. I've heard people put that theory forward. And, like, it actually doesn't matter. If the slip was planned, it's one of the most incredible pieces of wrestling psychology of all time to actually purposely do a botch in a high-profile match like that. That's brilliant. But if it's just a genuine slip, then Liger's reaction is maybe the greatest cover-up in wrestling history, because he in an instant, he just laughs and applauds and furthers the story of the match. You know what I mean? And to my mind, this finish, like I read some articles about this match and some reviews of the match, doing my research for the podcast, and I saw some people docking it half a star because of the botch. And to my mind, you add a half star for this botch. Like this finish makes the match better and makes the match more memorable. And like, I hadn't watched this match in maybe 10 or 15 years before watching it again for this podcast. I didn't remember much of the meat and the bones of the match but I remember the finish. The finish will always stay with me. Like, I think that moment where Liger claps sarcastically is one of the greatest moments of his 35-year career. The fact that he thought so quickly on his feet, and the fact that he, like, and think about the botch as well. Like, think of the punishment Sasuke has taken. You know, he's been dropped on his head multiple times. He's taken huge Liger bombs, suplex to the outside just before that match. He took that capo kick that nearly knocked him out. So doesn't it kind of make sense that he would botch the move? Like, he's probably disoriented. He's probably a little bit dizzy. He's probably exhausted. This is the second match of the night he's wrestled. So the fact that, him doing a botch fits in with the story of the match, you know what I mean? And the botch makes the whole thing better, to my mind.
Oh, I totally agree with you. Like, if people are deducting like half a star for the botch, well, I'm gonna add 2 stars for the belly laugh. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
That's a 2-star belly laugh, Jamesie. You know what I mean? It's a 2-star belly laugh.
Yeah.
But this is, what's great about this? This is one of those matches that you can go back and you can like just get granular, right? You can just go through it with a fine-tooth comb. Maybe that wasn't a botch, okay? Because all this other stuff would make sense that he would fall on his face.
Exactly.
But they like, also give credit to Sasuke. His recovery, like, he just goes into whatever the planned finish was, whether the botch was included in that or not, or whether it was actually a botch. And he pins him, and it's a perfect finish. Like I can't, like, maybe at the time, if I saw it at the time, it was like, oh, he fucked that up. But now I'm just like watching it, I'm thinking, I don't know if that was planned or not, because it's very possible that it was, because like these two are geniuses. They're wrestling like legends. They're geniuses. They, like, Liger is legit, probably in the top 5 smartest people ever to grace, the wrestling business.
Absolutely. And like, I rewound it countless times looking to see, could I see a moment, the way you might see 2 wrestlers call it and kind of go, you see them, you often see wrestlers having a little chat in the ring or having a little word with each other, calling, like, we better go straight to the finish. There's no sign of them saying anything to each other or giving each other any kind of an indication that they should go for the finish. So the whole thing happens very naturally and very organically. And as you said, like, it in no way diminishes this match. It enhances it tenfold. And like, as I said, if you were to say to me, of Liger's 35-year career, pick out a moment that sums him up and sums up his greatness the most, I would probably pick this moment and his reaction to what happened to Sasuke, you know, thinking on his feet and again, being so expressive and being so demonstrative from under the mask. Like we talked about it earlier with that near fall. It's the same thing again here. You know, as you said, he literally holds his belly and laughs and it's like, how can you tell that a guy under a mask is laughing and yet he convinces us that he's doing it? You know what I mean? So I just think, yeah, as I said, like I was so happy when you said to me this match was still on the table, because you said to me, pick a Liger match. And I assumed Liger Sasuke would have been the first one picked, you know what I mean? Because this is the match I think of when I think about Liger, and this is the match I think of when I think about how great he is.
No, like I was surprised that it had been picked. Like I can't remember like what number you were as far as like emailing or DMing people to be a part of this, but like it was like, this is going to be, I think, like episode 10 or 11. I'm not saying what episode numbers these are, because like just in case we want to move things around. But yeah, like maybe it's similar to the order that I asked people or who got back to me even. But this was still on the table, and you wanted to do this match. Like I figured it was either going to be this match. Like, when I'm thinking, who's going to pick what? I definitely knew Benno was going to pick the Bryan Danielson match from ROH, right?
Yeah.
That's his wheelhouse.
Pretty on
right?
brand, wasn't it? Yeah.
So, I thought
absolutely.
for you, okay, he's either going to pick, it's likely you're going to pick this match from the J Cup, or you're going to pick a Shinjiro Otani match. Because, like, I could just see Shinjiro Otani being, like, your kind of a wrestler.
Absolutely, yeah. Exactly. That would have been, I would have picked something that would have been maybe more mat-based and more ground-based for sure. Like, but yeah, as I said, I just think this is just an iconic Liger match, and this is the moment of that 35-year career. Like, this is it for me.
And to wrap things up for this match review, like I thought, people know my thoughts. I've reviewed this entire show with John way before. It's out there in the ether of the internet. You can go find that. I Wax Poetically. I love this match so much, and watching it again, I was just reminded of, like, you know, it's the other thing is Jamesie, like, I found things I didn't notice before in this match. That's how great it is. That's how great. I go back and I think I didn't notice that before. My God, this is amazing.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of little things in this match, and like, you know, anyone who listens to me regularly on the BWE at this stage of my wrestling fandom, I like the big high spots and I like the big moves and all that kind of thing, but I get great satisfaction in finding little things in matches. You know what I mean? So those submission holds at the start that are cinched in so well, and the viciousness with which they're applied, that reaction that Liger does when he's nearly pinned, the capo kick to Sasuke and how long he stays down, and the way the ref is trying to pick his head up and it just flops back to the mat. These are little things that I get great satisfaction out of from a wrestling fan. Like, and it's a match, like I watched it actually, I think it was 3 times in total in the last few days, and like it was, you know, I never go back and watch matches. I usually watch a match once and that's it. And I had no problem sitting through this match 3 times. It's an incredibly rewarding match, and you get more from it every time you look back. And to me, that's the sign of a really great match.
Well, I didn't think, like as many reviews as I've done into this series now, like I find that's a very common theme throughout a lot of Liger's matches. Like, there's a lot of things that you can like fine tooth comb. The first 5 minutes, the middle 5 minutes to the last 5 minutes of each match. There's like, things build up on it. It's like a cake. His matches are like a cake. There's like layers and layers and layers upon them, and a lot of that has to do with his opponents too, of course. But a lot of that, I'm gonna say, 65% of that is Liger. Is like, he's such a genius. He's such an amazing technical wrestler, high flyer. But just as a psychologist, like the psychology of wrestling, I can, argue with anyone, like it's evolved or it's changed, but I do think to some degree it's lost from like the era of the 90s of like people like, Liger and like Misawa and like Keijimoto and his prime. It doesn't exist as it's not as prevalent as it is back in the 90s, if you know what I'm saying here, Jamesie.
Absolutely, yeah. And like, again, I find myself frustrated a lot when I watch modern wrestling. Like you talked about the first 5 minutes of matches. I get very frustrated. And it's a criticism you could level at modern New Japan, I think, in particular, where you feel like wrestlers are just getting through the first 5 or 10 or even 15 minutes of longer matches. It's like they feel like they just have to get through that to get to the good stuff at the end. You know what I mean? And to get to the kind of the big moves and the big pinfalls and your big, those lovely New Japan finishing stretches that they do now. And like to me, I'm more drawn to the wrestlers who put the time and effort into making those first 10 or 15 minutes interesting. And like, that's why I would always hold up Liger as one of the all-time greats, because he always did things in his matches to make those opening sequences of his matches really, really interesting. And again, it's a comparison we've made twice already on this podcast. The guy in New Japan who does that best nowadays is Tanahashi. And like, it's interesting that the more we talk about Liger today, the more we see kind of that it's Tanahashi is the guy who has taken on a lot of his great habits and that kind of thing into the modern era.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of liken it like, a Liger match, like something like this match goes like 18 minutes and 9 seconds. So just under 20 minutes, but basically your average 20-minute Liger match is like binging a really intricately written like TV series, whereas like some of the matches you see nowadays are like, well, that's that's just like a Monster of the Week show on Fox or CBS or something like that. It's like you can get through it. It doesn't build on anything. It's just onto the next monster. These matches like with Liger in this era are basically, we got to refer back to episode 7 because that informs what's happening here in episode 14. That's the same with like what's happening in minute 13.52 is what is referring back to something he did in minute 3.17.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing it proves is that you don't need to go beyond 30 minutes to have a great match. Like, this is 18 minutes. I don't know if you agree with that with WH, but I think this is a 5-star match. Personally, I can't fault this match in any way whatsoever. And it just proves that like, you don't need to have a bloated epic, which we see like in most of the matches that get so highly rated by people these days are what I call bloated epics, where people are going well beyond 30, 40 minutes now, filling those matches with so much stuff. Whereas you can have a match like this where I feel like they very much picked their spots. Like, they weren't going crazy. They weren't doing things just for the sake of them. They filled their 18 minutes well, and it proves you can have a great match in that time limit. You don't need to go so long all the time, and it really frustrates me about modern wrestling, this pathological need to kind of, the idea that long is good, and anything that isn't long isn't good, and that just drives me mad these days, I
think you're going to find in 2019 and coming up on 2020 that the promotion or even the wrestler who is able to have a match that is like less than 20 minutes and still feel like it's an epic is going to be the guy or woman who gets like super over, and it's going to be like stand out from everyone else in wrestling. Because you're right, it's like a lot of people, whether it's in Japan or in North America or in the UK, it's people want to have, okay, we can have a minimum 30 minutes. And it's kind of legacy of Japanese wrestling from the 90s and from the 2000s, like that's conditioned people to think like this, but it hasn't always been like that. And I think one of the last points I want to make about this match is that it's only 18 minutes. And I say that, but it didn't feel like it was 18 minutes. It felt longer in a good sense. It felt like it was an epic, war that would, you normally would feel goes to like 30 minutes, but it wasn't. It was like half that time. But at the same time, it breezed by. It felt like a longer match because of the scope of it, but also went by so quickly. And this is so common in a lot of the Liger matches. Go back to my review that I did with Daniel Makabe about the Shinjiro Otani match. Go back to the review I even did with like the aforementioned Bryan Danielson match review I did with Benno. Like, these matches go by so quickly just because he is such an enjoyable wrestler to watch in the ring, I feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like, that's what I want from my wrestlers nowadays, and the list of wrestlers who I could say do that now, I feel is diminishing more and more, and like, you talked about the influence of Japanese wrestling. Like, it's also the influence of, I suppose, of critics and wrestling critics. And like, there has definitely been a move towards rewarding long matches. And like, if you go 40 minutes, you're guaranteed a minimum of 4 stars just because you went 40 minutes. You know what I mean? And ignoring the fact that maybe 20, 25 minutes of that 40 nothing happened. You couldn't remember it afterwards. You know what I mean? And so many times I see people critiquing a match, and they'll say something like, wasn't great for the first 25, but the last 15 were excellent. 4 3/4 stars. And I'm kind of sitting there going, hold on now, more than half of that match, nothing happened. And you're saying it's almost a perfect match. And I just can't understand it. When you have matches like this, where everything counts, everything matters. And as you said, it simultaneously feels long and epic, and at the same time passes in an instant. That's an incredibly rare thing in wrestling, to be able to do that.
It is. And with that, let's wrap up this review. Jamesie, where can people find more of you if they've enjoyed you talking with me here on Thunderstruck?
My Twitter is @Jamesie_2015, and you can find me every fortnight on the Post Wrestling Network with my friends Benno and Martin Bushby on the British Wrestling Experience. That's pretty much it.
Yes, and just to spoil things, like I have reached out to Jamesie and people who like the Cruel Summer series, and I said I will do an episode every year covering the finals of the previous year's G1 finals. So Jamesie is going to be the co-host on the next episode of Cruel Summer next August. If we're still talking to each other, if we're still friendly with each other.
Oh, we will. I feel like we mightn't be as agreeable on that one as we were on this match. I think we might have differing viewpoints on a certain man who was in that match. Am I right?
I think you like Jay White a lot more than I do, but that's good. That's going to make for an excellent podcast,
better, isn't it? Exactly.
That's good. Podcast. I have this debate with John Pollock all the time. He's a big fan of Jay White. I am not, but we'll save that for then. Definitely follow Jamesie on Twitter, and definitely follow him, Benno, and Martin over at the British Wrestling Experience. One of my favorite podcasts. I love the work you guys do. The interactions and the chemistry you have with Benno and with Martin is amazing, and I like when you have different guests on. Of course, some of our friends from the Grapple Spotlight podcast come on, like JP, your fellow Irishman.
My fellow Irishman, JP, absolutely.
And of course, Will Cooling from the PW Torch podcast, doing the British stuff. He's a usual guest on the British Wrestling Experience. Just a great show. I love it. I keep up with the British wrestling scene and the Irish wrestling scene through you guys as well. And of course, the stuff that the Andy Ogden does for the Undergraps portion of the show once a month. Great stuff. Check me out at WH Park 9. Check me out on Post Perez with John Pollock every month. And until the next episode, I will say to everyone, goodbye.